Greetings, I am Pillar Nexus, the Ancient Gladiator, today with nostalgia of the greatest kind. Today's episode of Pillarless Tabletop Games. Mage Knight Rebellion. Find a hero, build an army, create an empire. This is either the first thing to come from WizKids or one of the super early things, because I don't think I heard of them do anything before that. But yeah, you'll have various miniatures from various factions, various points values, various stats, various rarities of being able to find them. And you'll deploy them in a 3-inch out box that is 8 inches away from the side of the map, the battlefield. The standard game is on a 3-foot by 3-foot space and like 200 points. For demonstration purposes, we're doing a 100-point kind of throwdown with no terrain. But you'll probably want to have, for future games, terrain like trees, water, walls you can see over, and walls that totally block line of sight. It's a game that encourages you to make terrain out of anything to enhance the experience. Yeah. So you'll pick your point limit. Every 100 points is an action on your turn. Both players will build to that point limit as close as they dare to. And then you'll deploy, and you'll, for who's going first, let's say Necropolis Sect over here is going first, and then you'll take your turn. You're free to mix different factions of miniatures together, just as long as you're in that points limit. So on your turn, you have your action to do one of the following. Move. You'll use this neat little flexible ruler thing and measure from point to point how far you're going to move. For example, the Feral Bloodsucker has a movement of 10. And I know it's got that movement of 10 because all the stats are on the dial. Yeah. And of course, when your characters take damage, or warriors, their stats change. Until eventually, you hit the 3 skulls, and they're dead. And removed from the battlefield. Of course, if you get them down to demoralized, they're about as good as dead. You can kind of leave them there, unless they've got somebody with command, in which case I want to do something about it. But anyway, movement. So, they've got you can choose to kind of bend the ruler as you need to get the exact path you want. So 10 and about there. The main thing is you can't cross other people's bases. The path itself can't cross bases or get between bases and base contact. And then you can freely spin on your point, the direction you want to face. After you do your action, you'll put a marker next to your figure. Any figures that had markers on them from last turn will have them cleared. However, if on your next turn you decide to push, you can give an action to someone you gave an action to last turn, but it's considered a push, and they take a click of damage in the process. Nothing can stop pushing damage. And then on next turn, you can't give them any more actions. You'll have to give someone else an action so they can clear. In addition to... Let's go and move them back for a minute. Okay. Instead of movement, you can do ranged combat. On the only thing that will never change on a character is their range and their number of targets. So Utem Crossbowman in rank 1 has 8 range and can hit 1 target. If you can... Yeah. The attack roll is... Well, first you gotta see if they're in range. And they're not. But you know who's in range? Actually, it's just how it... Damn it. Something else you can kind of exploit with your movement is just trying to guess that you'll be on the safe side for movement. Let's just say for the interest of this demonstration, he's a feral bloodsucker is in range. All right. So again, from point to point, and you have to fire out of your front arc. Your front arc is the 90 or possibly greater arc on the front with all the stats and all that. Some figures might have a 180-degree arc for their front. But you'll measure up to that range and from point to point. So as they're in that range, you can make an attempt to shoot that target. So, 8 is the attack value. The sword is your attack value. The shield is their defense value. So, you'll roll, and you'll add that to your attack. So, 8 plus 9 is 17. 17 is greater than 15. So, I'm doing damage based on the damage value. It's a little starburst. And that'll damage the feral bloodsucker. Actually, at full health, is at 16, but now it brings him down to 15. There we go. Something you can do with ranged combat is also the ranged combat formation. So if everybody's got line of sight, you can put all of them together and boost your attack by everyone in excess of your initial attacker. So Utem Crossbowman's 8 becomes a 9, 10. And then that roll of 9 becomes a 19. It's more than enough. With the kinds of characters that can do the multiple arrow or multiple targets, like the Hierophant, you'll pick your 2 targets and roll a single die roll, and then each target will only take 1 damage. The Storm Golem is pretty nasty in that regard for being able to hit 3 at once. Alright. And there's close combat. Let's say that after pushing and getting into close combat, they decide to move this guy over here to get behind him. Whenever you move into base contact with someone, they have the option to free spin. So, if you're trying to get it behind him, the bloodsucker tries to move around to get the rear arc away from anybody. At close combat, you use your attack and damage as normal. Again, out of your front arc. You can also do close combat formations. If you've got 2 to 3... That's right, the numbers. So yeah, formations movement is 3 to 5, and you'll go based on their slowest speed. So like 6 inches for the zombies. Range combat 3 to 5, and then close combat is 2 to 3. Presumably because it's harder to do that way. But let's say for a minute that he didn't take that free spin opportunity. All right. So close combat formation will add 1 for each additional person in the close combat. If you're in the rear arc of your close combat target, you'll add +1. If you have anyone in your close combat formation in the rear arc, it's +1. But again, it's only to hit, not damage. Something else you can do at close combat is try to capture. You'll increase their defense by 2. And if you succeed, instead of damaging, you'll take them as a captive. A captive can act and they're subject to their capture speed ability. But 2 of them are going close, or at their slowest speed. And the goal is to try to get captives back to your deployment zone to score bonus points at the end of the game. Other things that can happen when rolling to hit. If you roll Snake Eyes, that's a critical miss. You do 1 damage to yourself. If this was part of a formation move or formation attack, then only the main person who is doing it gets hurt. However, if you roll 2 6s, that is a critical hit. You hit period, and you do an extra point click of damage. There'll be terrain effects from stuff in play, like hindering terrain. You have to stop as soon as you get into it. And then while you're in hindering terrain, you can move out of it, but your speed is reduced by half. Anyone trying to shoot through hindering terrain into you is going to have to deal with the hindering terrain modifier, which adds 1 to their defense. Certain special abilities can affect how terrain affects certain warriors. Like stealth lets people hide in terrain and not worry about ranged attacks. Close combat, however, will not save you. Water can work like hindering terrain, but only for the movement. And again, there are figures that can make use of water terrain to just move through with no problem. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of creative stuff you can do terrain-wise for this game. Yeah. Eventually, you'll hit the end of the game. If only 1 non-captive, non-demoralized warrior is left, or if you reach the time limit for a game, it should be about 2 hours or less, or 60 minutes for a 200-point game. Or mutual agreement. Then you calculate your victory points. Every eliminated opposing figure is worth points to you. If you capture your opposing figure, capture an opposing figure and bring them back to your deployment, then they're worth double. Your own units that are still alive are worth points. And most points wins. Tiebreaker being whoever used less of their points to build their force. So with all the various... so what are some other stuff? Some other things I haven't covered yet. Oh yeah, certain figures are called Mage spawn, and you'll know them because they have no faction symbol. They cannot make formations. They are too loosely organized to really work together. Whirlwind would add the shift, and they could bring Mage spawn together. There are some abilities that aren't even used, despite being featured, aren't used yet. Charge, Bound, and Invulnerability. Lancer would add the cavalry miniatures that would make use of Bound and Charge. And then the Arcana Draconum and Lich would use Invulnerability. Arcana Draconum would start with it, and Lich would get it if it got moved right to its last click of health. But yeah, certain abilities can prevent stuff from being captured or capturing just because they're so caught up in the fight. Yeah, Mage Knight was the start of the whole click dial fun from Woods Kids. It was Mage Knight Rebellion, Lancer, which added the cavalry, Whirlwind, which added the shift to bring Mage Spawn together. But it was Dungeons that was just probably the most fun the game could be. Because you'd have your hero faction and your miniatures could start at level 1 or 5 and have that many more clicks of health to work with and better abilities. There are mage spawns specific to dungeons, like the elemental minions and the Gate Lord. There were treasure chests that you could get and use to level up and all that. Some of the treasure chests were mimics. I appreciate them doing that. And then there's also the Dungeon Maker kits as well. But yeah, then they got a kind of soft second edition before moving on completely to Mage Knight Unlimited, which which cut off that little corner here. Changed the way the dial looks. Changed a lot of stuff. That's about the point where I kind of left it. And then after Mage, they also added stuff for like dragons and war machines and walls and towers. They went pretty heavy into this game. And then after Mage Knight was Mech Warrior Dark Age. We'll see about covering that at some point, but if you want Mech Warrior Dark Age was my introduction to the Battletech universe, and so I have one mech in particular that is like, yeah, this is my jam right here. They also Mech Warrior Dark Age added the great big mech dial with also the heat dial, where if you get hotter, your mech performs worse. It eventually shuts down. You could keep pushing mechs, and that would overheat. and they also had like multiple weapons options, and they were tougher. It was they used the 3 die system. Sometimes certain things would be happening because of this, because of doubles on this or whatever. Yeah, and then after MechWarrior Dark Age, there was they also did a second version that also kind of fell flat on its face. But that one also introduced the Aurora dropship, which was freaking huge. It was it was probably the coolest thing to see on the tabletop from the game. There was also Halo action clicks, which was kind of weird but also fun. But their big thing was going into hero clicks, just as a brand. Um, for Marvel, for DC, I've seen a box set for Watchmen of all things. I've seen uh, one figure packs for Kick Ass 2. Uh, I've seen a box set for Sherlock Holmes. They've done quite a bit with this game. So what do I? But why would I come back to Mage Knight of all things? What do I love about this game? Just how fun it is. You put figures down, throw some terrain down, you roll dice, you move things around, and you just have fun with it. You can make a campaign out of it, playing as the factions. Although certain factions are a bigger pain in the ass to get into than others, like Orc Raiders, Knights Immortal, and Draconum. Yeah, Rebellion only has 5 Draconum figures, and they're all rare. And I think Whirlwind or Lancer only added one more, and Whirlwind added one more. Yeah, it's hard to build an all Draconum army. They're usually working together with Mage Spawn or other things. Um, yeah, this is, and they're already painted, so it saves you a lot of trouble. All the stats are on a dial. The only major issue with the game is if you are not careful with your shit, stuff will break off the base, and you're gonna have to super glue it back on. And you want to use just the right amount of super glue not to cloud the information, but also be strong enough to hold it. Also, because of the plastic stuff being thin, sometimes stuff just breaks off of the figures themselves. But yeah, there's a shitload of lore for the game too. The game came with a freaking comic book. Just a little bit of lore on the front and back pages. The Atlanteans might be responsible for the Mage Spawn, and it was the where's the other figure? The Atlanteans, the Elementals, and the Necropolis were the main factions, and then Black Power Rebels showed up, and there was just sheer chaos. And then we've got the Knights Immortal, which are just kind of done with their shit, and the Orc Raiders are just doing their thing, and the Human Drake hybrids, known as Draconum, are doing whatever. There's a lot. A fun fact, the story credit for the comic is Michael Stackpole. If you're curious. Yeah, there's so much to play with for this game. Just get some figures, throw them down, and have fun. You might want to make sure you've got the 2001 edition special abilities, because that updates a few things in a way that actually makes sense. If you get any figures from Whirlwind, make sure to find the special rules thing that came with those, because they add the circle abilities in red, blue, and black. Uh, What else? Oh, that's the thing I missed. If a figure is unique, you can only use one unique figure of that name when building your army. But each side, it doesn't taking a unique on your side doesn't prevent someone from taking one of theirs. You'll want to get some stickers for like the bottom of your figure base to identify like which one's yours. The game comes with some of its own, and I think it includes some with booster packs, but also you can just get some basic labels and stick them on there. Yeah, Mage Knight Rebellion. This was my early teenage years of introduction to minis games at a somewhat reasonable price, with all the stats on the dial, movement and shooting and close combat being as simple as a roll of dice. Sometimes there is no super stupid ass abilities. Everything kind of makes sense. And it's just a I don't drink beer and I hardly eat pretzels, but this is definitely a beer and pretzels kind of game. So, Mage Knight, find some stuff, have fun, or find one of the other various clicks games from WizKids and have a blast. However you enjoy throwing down on the tabletop, there's something to be had with you know mages and warriors or battle mechs and vehicles and heroes and villains. Just have fun. Thanks for watching. This has been Pillar Nexus. I hope you've enjoyed the nostalgia trip, and we'll see you next time.